thank you very much for taking the time. Really appreciate it. I was very excited by the opportunity to speak with you. You've been a pioneer for women in technology through your career at AT&T, Microsoft, and then for many years as the CEO of Frontier, and you've been on so many boards. So this is a perfect conversation to have with you because you've seen it from both sides over many, many years. So maybe we should start out with, and the focus of this is very much the role of women on boards in the technology industry. So, maybe starting at just a high level in terms of your years in the business and what you've seen about the role of women over time on the board, in the boardroom. We can talk about the executive suite as well, but in the boardroom, it's just as an opening general question. Mhm.
Well, Lee, it's great to be with you, and thank you for taking the time to do this as well. I think it's such a hot topic and an important topic these days, and women have gained momentum in getting on boards, but we still have a ways to go. Every board I went on, uh, the public boards especially, I would get on the nominating and governance committee. Sometimes I'd have to weasel my way on, but I would get on the committee because what I wanted to do was get another woman on the board with me. So I always looked at my hand pushing forward to help me go forward, but I'm always yanking one more woman right behind me.
On that, has it been harder for women, do you think, to get on technology boards as opposed to consumer and other service types of organizations?
Yes, and I also think the tenure of the company makes it difficult as well. For a lot of technology companies, they start private. So the
Right.
boards are small and they're financial sponsors, right? They're typically the people that have put the money into the company.
Hmm.
And as we know, in the Silicon Valley, that's typically guys.
Hmm. Yeah.
So what happens is when those companies go public, those financial sponsors over a couple year window will usually want to be able to have some liquidity. And if they do, they can't really stay on the boards, right? They're going to go focus on investing that money in other companies and caretaking those companies to liquidity events. So I've always seen that as an opportunity to kind of refresh the board and to bring on women onto the boards that I served on from a technology perspective.
Mhm.
Uh, but it's also the boards have a tendency to be small where your Fortune 500 companies, you'll probably typically have 12 people on a board, right? Because of the work of the board. Where in smaller technology companies, you might have 5 to 7. So it is a game of numbers,
Right.
right? As well.
Good.
So,
Yeah.
and as those companies get bigger, depending on if they're founder owned and led, or they wind up with professional leadership. I think in the tech companies with more professional leadership, you see that expansion of diversity faster
Mhm.
than you would with a founder-led company. I think a lot of founder-led companies keep it more closely knit, smaller boards, because the ownership and the decision rights are concentrated. When it was HP before the HPE Enterprise and HPI Inc. split, uh, the board was, had some amazing women on it, including Meg Whitman and Pat Russo. And when the company decided to split into two, Meg and Pat really put together a strategy to take 6 of those 12 board members and they would go to HPI and 6 would stay on HPE. And then they could populate those boards with another 6 board members each. So they could really transform the board in a very thoughtful way.
Mhm.
And they were adamant to making sure those boards were diverse. So multiple women on the boards, multiple people of color, and multiple backgrounds and capabilities. So I've seen that work, and same with the HPI board, very
Mhm.
diverse.
Yep. Yep.
And Meg was truly she was a champion for diversity, but she was intentional about it. And Pat Russo as well. And I think having leaders that are intentional can make the big difference as to the structure of the board and how that work gets done. And the
Mhm.
last footnote I would say, if you look at the incremental shareholder value of that split, and then those companies focused on 2 different strategies, it released more than $10 billion in incremental value to the shareholders. So it was good business as well.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I'm curious about your reaction to the California law been put in place and now is being expanded to, it was initially women, a certain number of women on a public company board, and now people of color and other forms of diversity. What is your view about mandating it? And I know we had this argument or this discussion years ago when Europe went to their 40%, and was it a good thing? Was it a bad thing? What's your view?
I'm really not a big fan of mandates at all. But I think the California mandate was a catalyst for some change
Mhm.
that needed to happen, because there were a couple major industries that are heavily headquartered in California, including the media and entertainment industry and the
Mhm.
technology industry. And those two industries were typically the laggards on diversity for their boards.
Mhm.
I would have preferred to see a mandate that had a sunset to it.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
but that's not to say it can't sunset at some point, right? It still could. But I do think if you look at where we are today, based upon that first mandate being put in place for one woman, at least on every board, uh, 2 years ago, 30% of the public companies still were not in compliance. Now it's down to 3%.
Mhm.
So that's made a huge shift. There's at least one woman on basically every public company board in California.
Conventional wisdom is the boards want CEOs and CFOs first and foremost, which is still for a large portion is still true. What other areas are you seeing on your boards interest in particular qualifications, backgrounds, or even demographics? What are you seeing?
Well, and I think this discussion's happening in the boardrooms today, because we all know we'd all love to have 100% great CEOs on our boards. There's just not enough of us to go around, right? If you're a CEO. And CEOs that run public companies are usually limited to one outside board. So
Mhm.
it's not like I'm retired, so I can go on 3 or 4 boards that are public, where a sitting CEO can only do one. And in some cases, they're precluded from doing any, especially if they're a new CEO
Right.
to a company. The conventional wisdom is, oh, it's got to be a CEO, and CFOs are usually precluded on sitting on more than one board as well, or a president of a division. I think you're seeing um, looking for skills and capabilities that are still executive level, but they're down. They could be divisional execs, they could be operational execs, they could be CTOs and CIOs and CISOs. And cybersecurity is such a major enterprise risk to companies of all sizes. Um, the whole diversity and inclusion focus and the ESG focus has opened things up for general counsels and also heads of HR, which
Mhm.
in the past were not really considered um, the kind of backgrounds for boards. So
Mhm.
I think the work of the board has changed. And with that work changing, it has opened up for executives across the board in companies that are diverse and both gender and race, to have opportunities that they might not have had 5 years ago. Yeah, I think the other change that's taken place over the last couple of years, though, is the shareholder investor base has become activists on this topic.
Mhm.
And in the past, they were passive. They didn't really weigh in on whether your board was diverse or not. So I do think that's also helped. When the shareholders speak, companies have a tendency to listen.
Are there specific areas you see that women are more likely to struggle than men, whether it's their behavior or whatever it might be?
Yeah, I think boardrooms are intimidating because there's nobody in charge, right? Uh, and when you get diverse boards, it's a little bit. I'm dating myself, but it's a little bit like the bar scene in Star Wars, right? You have people from all walks of life and all backgrounds, and sometimes they're speaking different languages. So trying to jump into those conversations when you're new, right? Because you haven't really developed that rapport and relationships yet. You have a tendency, I've seen with women, is to lean back more instead of leaning in.
Mhm.
Uh, And I try to be a consigliere to women that are new to the boards, and to talk to them between meetings, and to help them, ask them how they're doing. Is it working for them? And to be that consigliere. And uh,
Mhm.
because I do think I don't want women to hesitate. I want them to put their ideas on the table. And I try to give them permission that it's just fine. I know sometimes so and so goes over the edge on certain things, but don't
Mhm.
take it personally because it's not personal. It's
Right.
just part of the process of getting to the right decision. So I
Yeah.
do try to do that coaching with new women, especially. So the other thing I will say about some women, I don't want to stereotype because it's not everybody and we all have different strengths and weaknesses, but uh, if you come on strong on a topic, I have had women call me afterwards and say, well, did I come on too strong on that? Right? Was I sort of out of line saying that? You never hear a man. I've
No.
had a man bring that up to me in my entire board career. But women have a tendency, we
Yeah.
try to, we second guess sometimes what we do and how we do it. And
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I think encouraging that it's okay. That's what you're
Yeah.
supposed to do.
In terms of boards, diversity generally, or other things that are on your mind in terms of how technology company boards can evolve. Mhm.
Yes, I think that we will continue to see diversity evolve, but especially because of the new laws in California that will just drive
Mhm.
diversity to a new level for a number of these boards, especially as the technology companies get bigger and they do their refreshing.
Mhm.
Uh, I also think that we will see a trend of more corporate responsibility on the part of technology companies. That that big is not necessarily better if the behavior isn't good, right? And I think we've seen some examples of that over the last several years of even founders
Right.
not staying in their positions, even with control of the company. So I do think that leadership will matter. It's not just about the technology. It's about leadership on a broad level, and an accountability and responsibility for the products and services you put in the hands of your customers, and a
Mhm.
transparency that hasn't been there before. Uh, uh, and I do think that boards, from a governance perspective, will start to spread their wings on technology company boards, uh, to be more inclusive and to have these conversations and help leaders in technology expand how they do their outreach, how they build their products and services, how they build their cultures internally, and that there's an accountability associated with that. But I do think that I'm optimistic. I do want to end with that. I think that we are seeing boards get stronger with diversity, not weaker. Uh, we see boards, they're not checking boxes with the people that they're putting on, but there are actually terrific women out there that can serve and do serve. I think the multiplier effect has been very positive because as you get more women on boards, the work of the board is better and the outcomes for the companies in terms of their results are better. So I think we're building also that track record. Uh,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
there's still a ways to go,
Yeah.
not just in technology, but in a number of fields. And I'm hoping that the momentum is done correctly, where we don't need to have mandates by state or at the federal level. That
Right.
businesses just recognize it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you. Really appreciate the time. It was really interesting conversation,
Yeah,
and
it
hope
was
to see
great
you
to have
soon.
it with you. Thank you.